So when I first played Axl versus Goldlewis Dickinson, I thought that it seemed pretty easy for Axl, and I said as much on Twitter, but I figured that that wasn't an optimized Goldlewis that I'd played against the first time. I then played against a player who really was using the character well and seemed to know the Axl matchup pretty well. We played a long set. And when I say we played a long set, it was a long set. We played for a long time. We had about 75 matches, more or less, against each other. And in that time, I took most of them. As the set went on, though, player got more and more, and by the end, we were about 50-50. In fact, they took the last few of them. How did that happen? Like, what were the ideas that this player was using to get in on Axl? Once you're in there, you should have a party, right? Enjoy yourself. How do you get in there in the first place, though, I think is a good question. So I'm going to be looking at some of those matches just in brief little snippets to show you. Some of these ideas are just good general Axl stuff. If you're playing against an Axl, like here's some ideas about what to do that basically apply to most characters. But some of them are more Goldlewis specific stuff. I don't want to tell you that I think Goldlewis wins the matchup or anything like that. It's not the goal of the video. I instead just want to give you some ideas because I don't think the matchup is as bad as some people might expect. Really important idea that's always important when it comes to playing like big body type characters versus zoners is that Goldlewis has an effective larger health pool, so he can like usually take more hits than most other characters, and you can use that to your advantage because you can jump forward, air dash, run in, and get hit more times than many other characters can. So as we watch this, just look. Sure, he's trying these things out. He's trying jumps. He's trying air dashes. He's trying to wait then dash. He's trying to block. He's trying to just always pressing forward. He took, 40% life, right? If he gets in, if he just makes me block a few Behemoth Typhoons, we've evened it up in life. And if he finds a full hit, like maybe I've lost 60%, So the idea is that can balance out if you make the right calls. Again, it's not always going to be the case that you make the right calls. More often, Axl's going to be right when it comes to like these individual, yes or no zoning decisions. It's just that you need to keep in mind that when you do finally get in, you're going to be able to really light them up pretty quickly. Round start position is really important in this kind of a matchup because it's actually closer than you might spend a lot of the round. So in that spot, you got to think about what your potential opening options are and what Axl's potential opening options are. Axl has things like a pretty decent, far, fast 5S, 5P, 2P. He's got these different tools. He can just back off. He can do an instant air dash back into jump S. He's got these different kind of wheel of options. Maybe he expects you're going to jump right away and he starts out with 2S himself and looks for the fences on that. Well, Goldlewis has options too. So jump D deals with some of those pretty well. 2S can actually get underneath things like 5P. It can actually trade with some other options, or it can actually just beat out some stuff. Jump D is an option that we're going to see right here. Jump D. Okay. Now, again, if I had called that, maybe I could have started off the round with 2S. So that's a risky idea, because if I do that, then I'm going to stand there and just get probably whiff punished into big damage, into a bad situation. So, I can certainly deal with this as Axl, but that round start position is a mix-up that you have to be willing to play right away and know that there's different timings and options that you can use for ways to counterplay against what Axl wants to do. So while Goldlewis is pretty slow, he does have a run and he does have an air dash. He only has one jump, but he does have some mobility options. So it's important to be using those in spaces where you can. Okay, here's some ideas. So at the beginning of this round, as you'll see here, the Goldlewis player is gonna find a spot that's like just outside of my 2H range, and he's ducking under where 5P would be. And he just happens to get right around the 2H, right? Backdash, forward dash. Why backdash, forward dash? Because the player doesn't want me to know where he's gonna be. If it's obvious to your Axl opponent where you are, they're gonna be able to nail you with some little sniper shot from far away. But if they don't know, then it's gonna be less easy. This dashing on the ground then allows him to find super jump air dash or regular jump air dash, both useful, into jump kick, jump D. We'll see these a few different times. 5P actually can get run under by lots of different characters. Some characters can just like run under it the entire way. Some it's not the entire way. Goldlewis actually can run under part of it when it's at max range. So here's the example of it, right? He gets ranged out. He just ran through 5P. Now, again, keep in mind that that is further range. Look where this happens. Okay, right? Pretty far. If it were closer in, he would get hit because that happened all the time in our set. But at this specific range, he can move forward. 5P is there a while, right? Axl's busy with this for a while, and so as you can see during that time, Goldlewis gets pretty close, and then I'm like, oh boy, I have got to skedaddle. But this is Goldlewis, what, building half stage or something like that for himself? Let's talk as well at this point about Rensen. Axl's really fast, far, multi-hitting projectile. It's got different options out of it. But as Axl, you don't always want to do the same thing. So sometimes you just want to do like Rensen, nothing, or Rensen, then another Rensen, or Rensen, then explosion, or whatever, right? You have to mix it up. As the opponent, though, you can be mixing up about how to handle this. What do you think the Axl's going to do? So in this clip, we're going to see a little bit of me trying some like Rensen timings and stuff. But Goldlewis actually can do super jump into dash forward into jump D from pretty far away and still be a threat right over Rensen. So let's check that out. So okay, he's trying different timings, or I'm trying different timings. I get got, right? I get got. Now that doesn't lead into giant damage right away. There was an overhead in that situation right there, but that does get you close enough to at least, again, get the party started and then play your offense. Also, as you're moving around the stage, Axl's probably going to want to do like button into Rensen. He's probably going to do like 5P or 2H or something, cancel it into Rensen to try to just get some more control, push you back, maybe start a mix up. But realize that when he does that, Rensen actually has more startup than you might realize. It moves pretty fast once it's out, but he's starting up for a while. So those aren't tight block strings. So you can block and then move. This is a really good example of it right here. We're playing around, right, yada yada. 2H, okay. If you are the opponent and you expect it to be Rensen, you can actually take this time to jump, so you can move. There goes Rensen right underneath Goldlewis. Goldlewis can move over with something like jump D. Again, in playing around with Rensen and the options afterward, you really got to keep your eye not just on like whether it's explosion or the up version, but also vacuum, and realize that vacuum doesn't really have a good anti-air hitbox. You can actually just jump and use the fact that Axl is vacuuming to actually get more range and get closer and do jump ins from ranges that you wouldn't typically be able to. So here's a really good example of that from this player. Right, we're playing this kind of rangey game, yada yada, different timings on Rensen is what I'm trying to do here. Okay, so I tried to do Rensen 2, again, the vacuum. This, as Axl, again, I have an option here. As you see, I do the RC to save myself because I see what's about to happen. I'm about to get busted. But you can use that. Look at how far this actually worked for the player. Jump H doesn't have that kind of range usually, right? His jump is not that far, or that fast typically. But that vacuum actually pulled him in. So be aware that if you think it's vacuum, you actually can usually get a jump in, and sometimes from even further away than usually. Axl's not just about zoning, he can also pressure like reasonably well. And one of the things that he can do is try to hit confirm with something like 2K2D. If hit, go into snail for a knockdown. If block, go into rainwater, which is plus on block, and moves him out of the way. Right, moves him backwards quite a bit. As the opponent, if you're expecting rainwater, though, in that specific instance, you actually can jump. You can actually just jump out of it. Many characters can anyway. And here's an example of that. So pressuring into just jumping out. Now, this could have been something else. This could have been the player moving forward there. Could have been, again, an opportunity for jump D. It doesn't punish necessarily, although it can in some cases. But at least like you get forward movement and you're pressuring here. Let's talk about jump D. Jump D attacks pretty fast, really far close to the ground. Ooh, boy. So if Axl, like again, if Axl thinks that you're going to be staying on the ground, hey, the player had just done that back and forth movement, right? If he thinks you're going to be staying on the ground, you can go up into the sky with jump D, again, jump K. We'll see jump H a couple of times in this as well. We've been mostly talking about mobility options, and while Goldlewis doesn't have the fastest stuff, it's still really important to use the things that you have. But he also has some counter poke tools. So once you get into a certain range, 2S has a really strong hitbox. It can duck under stuff, and it can counter poke well, and you can get a knockdown out of Behemoth Typhoon that comes from it, and then get the party started yet again. So here's an example of that, right? We're playing this kind of rangy game. There's mobility, right? That jump into a different timing on air dash as a way to move forward. There it is, right? And now because of that, they're right up close. Okay, I didn't guess right on the overhead, but that's the kind of thing that you need to have happen. You need to find that counter poke, and 2S can do that. What can it counter poke? It can beat things like 5P, which it goes under. It can hit something like 5H as 5H is coming out before it's actually active. I haven't been talking too much about the special moves that use security meter because I don't think that they're that great, at least in this matchup. It's just hard to find time to use either one. They both have quite a lot of startup, and Axl can usually counter poke, or even if he blocks or gets hit by the minigun, he can still move first. Not super great. Here's a specific instance though where it seemed useful, at least to like push me into the corner, right? So okay, cool. Now, I mean, as you can see, like it's not the best outcome for Goldlewis in the sense of like he gets into pressure and damage right away, but he does at least put me into the corner, and there's utility in that. Again, I don't want to claim that I think that Goldlewis beats Axl, but I do think that there are tools that you can learn from in watching stronger players play that can show you how to approach this. So he does have things that Axl has to respect. It's not the case that Axl can just press 5P and win, or just press jump S and win. It's not that simple. Goldlewis does have options that can allow him to move around. He does have options that allow him to counter poke. He does have options that allow him to get through stuff in some cases, or to set things up in some other cases. And you're probably gonna lose most of those interactions as the Goldlewis player. But when it works out, that's the time when you should be trying to do, and can honestly reasonably expect, I feel, to do about as much damage as you took on the way in, because his pressure, again, even on block, where he's doing, you know, guard break, BMF Typhoon stuff, is still really damaging, and on hit is even more so, and can be very scary for the Axl player. So in combination, again, I'm not here to tell you that I think Goldlewis wins the matchup. I just want to give you some ideas to play against Axl that I think can be effective. I hope that they will be.